The software and computer side of video live streaming can be a little bit intimidating for a lot of small churches and people that are trying to get that set up. So I wanted to give you just a real brief overview of OBS. It's the free software available online that I think works really well. It's an open source platform. It is a little bit awkward at times to use. There's a few things about it that to the non-tech savvy may be a little bit confusing, but once you get the basics, it really is a very powerful tool. There's a lot that you can do with it, and I think that once you get started with it, you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly, and it will be of great benefit for you. So I just want to take a few minutes and show you the basics of setup. So this is the screen that you'll see when you've downloaded and installed OBS and open it up for the first time. And let me just give you a quick overview. This screen here obviously is your what you're displaying, what you're going to be sending out to your stream. And then down here in the bottom, you have scenes. You can add however many you want of scenes that are going to look differently, and then you can switch between those. Then in your sources panel, that's going to be all of the things that you have coming into OBS. Maybe that is your video, obviously. Maybe it is slides for lyrics to songs. You can stack things and have things that are going to overlay on top of your image. You can manipulate the size and location of those kinds of things. You can bring in pictures, videos, pretty much whatever you need in that panel there. And then you've got your audio panel here that's going to show you the level of signal that you've got coming in from each of the audio inputs you have, and it'll give you some control over those. You have some control over your transitions, how it's going to go from one scene to the next. Is it going to fade, or you want it just to cut and be a little more abrupt? Choose what you want there. And then you've got a few buttons here to control things. Start and then later stop your stream, start and then stop your recording. The studio mode can be handy. It shows you here your next scene up and the one that's live, and you can cycle between them using this interface if you want. I don't prefer it. I'll leave it set this way. And then your settings button and an exit button. So let me show you the first thing that you need to do. The first thing is to get your primary video source into the computer. So this scene that's default here, we can just let it be where we're going to start. We can rename it later if we need to. But we're going to go to the sources panel, and we're going to click on the plus sign. I'm assuming that you already have your camera plugged into your capture card and that it's turned on and you're ready to go. So we've plugged in our camera. We click on the plus sign, and we need to add a video capture device. So we look through this list, all the different things that we can add, and right here we have video capture device. So we'll click on that. We'll name it whatever we want to name it. I'm going to name mine Camera 1, and I'm going to click OK. And then it's going to come up and it's going to give me some options. And it automatically knew, hey, this is the capture card he has, and the settings are configured. It just found my device. And it often will do that depending on what device you have, but it definitely won't always. So what you'll want to do is go to this drop-down menu and try and see what's available, and hopefully yours is showing up at that point. If not, you may need to get online and download some drivers for what you have and get those installed. But you select that, and then you look through some of these other things. And all of these settings through here, you basically want those to match what your camera is outputting. So you want this input to be looking for something that's the same resolution as what your camera is outputting. I'm using regular standard HD, so it's 1920 by 1080. My frames per second, it's using the default here, but you can put those in. Sometimes it'll be something a little strange, like strange to you if you're not a video person, something like 23.97. That's, you don't need to hear the story of where that comes from, but it's one of the things you might find. So look through your settings in your camera. If it doesn't automatically show up, find all of these things, the color space, color range, and just go through and troubleshoot, trial and error until you get your camera to show up here. But once you've got it, you go ahead and click OK. And so automatically, it's not only getting my video, but it's also getting my audio, and that's showing up here. One thing to note with audio you usually don't want the audio coming from your camera to be what you use in the stream. So I'm actually just going to mute this one right now because I don't want to use the sound that the camera is picking up. So what I want to do now is I want to add a good quality audio source. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go to audio input capture because that's the way I have mine set up. I'm using an audio interface that's coming into the computer and giving me my sound from my sound system, so I'll do that. I only need one of these, and we'll go to the drop-down menu, and again, it found what I needed. This is my Soundcraft notepad. You may need to go into your settings for your operating system, whether that's Windows or Mac, and make sure that your computer recognizes your audio input device. Again, drivers may be an issue there, but once that's all done, it should show up here. You can click OK. And so you see now in this device, I have audio coming in through my sound system, and I can control the level of it if I need to here. So you want to avoid these meters getting up into this red. You want them to be right kind of in the middle of the yellow when your volume is at its higher end that it's going to be. So what I'm doing now, obviously my voice is staying pretty much around the same volume. So I know that I'm getting enough signal, but I'm not what's called clipping in this red where my signal is going to get distorted and have some problems. So we've got that. Now we need to get our settings configured. So we're going to go to our settings panel. That's going to come up, and you see you've got these different tabs with different pieces of information in them, different settings you can control. In our general, there's not a whole lot you need to worry about in here when you're getting started. There's a lot you can do in all of these panels, but the couple of places you want to go to get started, first and foremost, is this Stream tab. And this is where you need to set up this software to send your stream to the service that you're using. So you need to go to your internet. If you're using YouTube, if you're using Facebook, whatever you're using, go to your streaming platform. I'm going to show you how to do it in YouTube because that's what I'm using. I'm going to go to the YouTube Studio page, to my channel, my dashboard. Just log into your YouTube account, click on your channel, and this will come up. I'm going to click Create. I'm going to click Go Live. And it's going to give me this option. I can reuse the last settings that I used. I don't want to use that right now, so I'm going to hit Dismiss. I'm going to title what I'm doing. If I need to add a description, if I want to schedule this for later, all those kinds of things. And then I'm going to click Create Stream. Oh, you have to click this one and tell it whether or not it's made for children. This isn't asking, is it appropriate for children? It's asking if it's specifically made for children. So probably the answer is no, so you'll click no, and then you'll click Create Stream. And it'll think for a minute. And then here's what you need. This right here, Stream Key, Paste in Encoder. So I'm just going to click Copy right here, and I'm going to go back to OBS, and I am going to select my service. I'm using YouTube, and I'm going to paste in my stream key, and I'm going to hit Apply. So now when I hit this Start Streaming button, I'll show you in just a minute, it's going to send my stream to YouTube. And let's look at one more thing. Let's look at our output settings. And this is going to give us some control over our computer encoding the video and the quality of the video that it's going to send out. So I've selected Advanced in my output mode. It gives you some more tools that I think you should be able to use. You don't have to worry about all of it, but it enables you to do some more things. So I am using a constant bit rate. It's best if you use a constant bit rate from what I can tell. I've got mine set to target 5,000, and I've done some trial and error to figure out what my internet speed can handle, and I've found that with my computer and my internet speed, 5,000, and then this setting right here is also important, your CPU usage preset. I think, if I remember correctly, it defaults to very fast. That's what it shows you. And I've, again, some trial and error that you should do as well, landed on using faster. And I may actually increase that a little bit more this week because I made some upgrades to my computer in the past couple of days. But anyway, this is a little bit confusing. So the way that this works is the slower that it's encoding, the more of your computer's horsepower it's using, the harder your computer is working. So if I click down here on slow, my computer is going to take a long time to encode the video before it sends it out. So it's going to increase the delay on my stream. I think, I'm actually not sure about that, but I think it does do that imperceptibly. We're talking milliseconds. But the big thing is it's going to use more of my computer's processing power. The slower it is. The faster, the less of your computer's processing power it's going to use, but consequently, the potentially less quality your video is going to have. It's going to rush through getting things encoded, and it may look a little grainy. The color may be a little bit off. It's not going to be the best quality. So you want to find this place in the middle where your computer's not working too hard to encode the video, but where you're getting the most quality you can out of it. So for now, I know that faster is good, so I've selected that one. Let's make sure our video settings are the way we want. You can adjust here. You can adjust here your resolution if you only want to output a 720 signal, or you've got a 4K capture card and you want to stream in 4K. You can do that. It's not letting me change that right now because I have my video active. That has to be inactive to do that. But anyway, so I've changed all the settings that I need to change. I click apply, I click OK. Okay, so now that I've adjusted all of my settings, I've got everything set up the way I want it, what I can do is I can click start streaming. And it'll take it a minute to get started. But once it gets started, it'll start sending. I can go back over here to my YouTube page, and it'll take it a minute for it to connect. But once it connects, you'll see here what I'm outputting from OBS. Here it comes, and there it is. This is what I'm doing in OBS. And then when I'm ready on Sunday morning or whenever I'm doing my stream, I'll click this button here, and that will send my video live to my YouTube page and anywhere that I have my this YouTube stream ID, anywhere that I have that embedded. So like I have on my church website a video player connected to my YouTube channel embedded there. So on the live streaming page just on my church website, when I click this button, this shows up there, whatever I've got here coming from OBS. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want my talking head to show up on the church's website. But back here in OBS, we'll go ahead and stop that. I don't need to be sending that right now. But I want to show you a couple things that you can add in, and then a couple of things that you want to look for. The first thing that I think is really helpful is to add some layers to this image that I'm sending out. So I'll click add, and I'm gonna add some text. So I'll just select text. I don't need to rename it. And I'll type, this is going to be the sermon title. And I'll click OK, and there it is. It overlays that text on top of my video. And you saw in there, I can adjust the font or whatever I want to do with that. I can move either of these around. I didn't mean to click on that one. Wanted to move this one. I can move this around, get it where I want it. I would probably want that down there in this lower section. That's a little bit too big, so let's shrink it down some. But there we go. So now I have the title of my sermon, and I can create different scenes. So let's create a new scene. And in that scene, you say, oh no, where'd my video go? Just go back to your sources, add audio capture, add existing. I'm going to put that back in. And same thing with my video capture device, add existing, camera 1. Okay, and so there we are. We're back. This is basically, so you can also just do it this way and duplicate it, and then name that one, and that'll show up. And so what I usually do is I go in and make however, just at the very start, make however many I'm going to need. Just that way, just duplicating them and rename them what they're going to be. And then I'll go to each scene. And so this scene, this scene is my sermon title, so I would name that sermon, and I'll click on that when the pastor gets up to preach. And then this one, maybe this is just a blank shot of the pulpit, so I'll click on that one when I need that. But then maybe on this one, I want to add in some song slides. There are several ways you can do this, and I'm going to make another video later on about the way that I do that. But one way you could do it is to go over here to your sources, add, and where is it? Image slideshow. So we'll say OK on that. You can select some things here. Is it going to play automatically? For what we're talking about, probably not. We want to make that a manual one. The time for the transition, those kinds of things. But then down here, you can add files or add a directory. Adding files, you can just select the images you want, and it'll drop those files here, and you'll have an image slideshow of those. So what I had to do for a little while was make presentations like in PowerPoint or Keynote or something, and export those as images, and then import those this way to get text for songs onto my computer. And I'll show you, I've got some of that in here. Well, these are some slides that had some pieces of liturgy on them, so that'll work. I'm going to select those three and select open. There they are, OK. And so I can then adjust the size here. How big do I want that? Let's move that over there so it's not covering up my face. Let's make it a little bigger so it's a little more readable. And there we go. And then, if I go back over here to settings, and I go to hotkeys, and I scroll down here a little bit to my image slideshow, I can select here for next slide, and I can just use the right arrow key. And then previous slide, I can hit the left arrow key. And I can click apply, and OK. And now I'm here in this scene, and I put those up, and I hit the right arrow key, and it takes me to the next slide, and the next slide, and so on. And so you can work through things that way. And if on the fly you need real quick to make that go away, you can just click that little eyeball, and that'll hide that, and that's gone. The other thing you can do on the image slideshows, and this, by the way, is going to, you need to know this. If you right-click on these, or command-click, or two-finger click on a Mac, or whatever device you're using, if you click on that and then click Properties, it's going to take you back to that main menu that you were given when you created this scene. But I can go down here and say, oh, I don't want those slides anymore. I'm not going to use those, so I'm going to remove those, and I'm just going to add a directory. Let's say I've got a folder on my computer that has all the slides that I'm going to use in the right order. I can just click that file, and it's going to automatically grab all of those for me. And if I change what's in that folder, then that automatically is going to change what shows up in OBS, provided that since I've made the change in the folder, I have restarted OBS. If I right now go and change what's in a folder that I've brought in, OBS usually, or sometimes, OBS won't officially automatically recognize those changes. It usually does, but it might not. So if you make some changes and you don't see them, just close it and reopen it, and you should be good to go. I do recommend you check the order, because I stopped using that. I only used it for a little while. And the reason that I stopped using it was when I used the directory feature, sometimes the order would get very strange. Even though the images were titled image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, image 5, etc., even though the date created, time created was ordered correctly, sometimes the order would just get strange. So be aware of that if you try and do that. I usually do it the first way that I showed you and just select all of the slides. And if I was doing it this way, which I'm not for most of my streams currently, I would create a scene for each song, for each component of the liturgy, and make sure you adjust those hotkeys in the settings for each of those. Last thing that I want to talk to you about on the basics of getting started here, two things. One, if I'm streaming, you're going to see down here in the bottom right a few pieces of information. I've got the green box down there, and next to it, I've got my frame rate, my FPS, and then my CPU percentage, the percentage of my computer's processing power that's being used by the video encoding process. And so right now I'm hanging out right around 50%, and that's okay. I'm happy with that. I've tested it enough to know that for me in my situation is a pretty reliable place to be. But if that number starts getting higher, or if this box starts turning yellow or red, and then this over here, if you start seeing dropped frames, there's a couple things you can check. It might be your internet connection, it might be your computer's power, its processing power, or it might be those encoder settings that we looked at in the settings, the presets, fast, super fast, slow, slower, and so you may need to do some trial and error, go and adjust those, go and adjust your bit rate, check your connection for your internet, all those things. You want, with things moving around on the screen, you want for this to stay green and for this number to stay reasonably low. If it's up in the 90% area, you're asking for trouble. But that's the basics. That gets you started on OBS. Once you do that, there's a lot more that you can add in. I'm going to make a video shortly that's going to talk about some next level steps you can make with OBS, some new things you can do, ways you can increase the quality of what you've got going on in here. So stay tuned for those, but thanks for watching.